For so many of us, the idea of shafa'at, or intercession, is this huge source of hope. It's the belief that on the day of judgment, maybe a prophet or someone truly righteous will be there to speak for us. But what does the Quran actually say about it? When we really dig into the source material, the answer is, well, it's a lot more interesting than you might think. And this really is the big question, isn't it? It's something so personal. Will the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, stand up and vouch for you when everything is on the line? For millions, this is a cornerstone of their faith. But our source material suggests the answer isn't a simple yes or no. It's conditional. And boom, right there. This single verse from the Quran lays down a massive condition. It's saying that intercession isn't just handed out. It's reserved only for those people God is already pleased with. Now think about that. That one prerequisite completely changes the game on how we might think intercession works. Okay, so let's start with that common idea, what our source calls the Great Hope. For centuries, the popular understanding has been that, prophets and saints can be our advocates, our go-betweens for salvation. And it makes sense. It's a really comforting thought, like a spiritual safety net for all our human flaws. And this belief, it comes from a place of deep, genuine love. The idea is that the prophet's compassion for his community is just so immense that his intercession is basically a guarantee for anyone who calls themselves a follower. But the argument from our source is that this view, as comforting as it is, might be missing that one critical condition we just saw. And that brings us to the core argument of our source material, the ultimate condition. This is where the perspective really shifts. The whole idea here is that intercession isn't something you just passively get. It's something you have to actively become worthy of, and it all hinges on one single, non-negotiable prerequisite. So you can see the two views side by side. Is intercession a guarantee just for being a believer? Or is it a possibility that depends entirely on your own actions? The source makes it crystal clear. This isn't about someone else saving you. It's about you earning the right to be saved. Wow, that's a powerful line. The source explains this verse came down after the Battle of Uhud. Some people had abandoned the prophet in a critical moment, and later they tried to get back in his good graces. But God's message was unmistakable. Even if the prophet himself forgives you, even if he's pleased with you, that approval means nothing if God isn't pleased with your actions. So it all boils down to this one central concept, Allah's Rizah, or God's pressure. This is presented as the master key. It's the one thing that unlocks the door to intercession. It's not about who you know, it's not even about who loves you. It's about whether your life, your choices, your very being has earned God's satisfaction. So that leads us to the most important question of all, right? If everything hangs on earning God's pleasure, how in the world do you do that? Well, our source material actually lays out a pretty clear path. It's really a two-part formula. First, you need iman, a deep, sincere, genuine faith. But here's the kicker. Faith by itself isn't enough. It has to be paired with a second part, amal salihat, consistent, righteous deeds. And that word consistent, that's everything. This isn't about one good deed. It's about a lifestyle, a constant effort. To help us really get this, the source uses this brilliant analogy. It says to think about your journey to salvation like you're driving a car. But just having one part of the car isn't going to get you to your destination. You need the whole thing to work together. So think about it. Your sincere prayer, your faith, that's the engine. It's the source of power. But an engine is useless without wheels, right? Those wheels are your righteous deeds. They're what give you traction and actually move you forward. And the fuel? That's your struggle, your constant effort. And here's the most important part. Who's the driver? You are. You're the one in control. Now, to see how this all works in the real world, the source shares this incredibly personal story, a true test of faith. It takes this whole idea from just theology and brings it right down into a raw human experience. So the speaker talks about how his marriage started out. It was full of the best intentions, full of confidence in their own ability to make it work. It was a partnership built entirely on human will, on that feeling of, hey, we got this. But then life happened. The struggles, the pressures, the disagreements. And all that self-reliance, it just wasn't enough. Despite all their efforts, the relationship completely fractured, and they ended up separating. Their own power had failed. And this was the turning point. When they were apart, they both stopped trying to force their own will on the situation, and instead surrendered to God's will. They started to focus their actions not on what they wanted, but on what was right, on what would earn God's pleasure. And the results of that surrender, when they came back together, it wasn't because of their own strength. It was because they had submitted to something higher. And in that, they found a peace and a happiness that was even deeper and more profound than the excitement of their own wedding day. Because this time, it was built on a divine foundation. So after going through the conditions, the how-tos, and that powerful story, what's the big takeaway? The source leaves us with a message that's both a huge challenge and incredibly empowering. The power is yours. You cannot outsource your own salvation. Your destiny doesn't ultimately rest in the hands of an intercessor. At the end of the day, the responsibility, and therefore the power, is with you. In other words, the path to being worthy of intercession is the exact same path to salvation itself. It's forged in the fire of your own personal faith, your daily actions, and the strength of your direct, personal relationship with your Creator. And that brings us to the final question to take with us. If your salvation is something that has to be earned, not just given, if every single action, every intention, every moment is what truly builds your case for earning that divine pleasure, how does that change the way you live your life? Starting right now, today.